Let me first begin. I planned to start off, and I certainly want to acknowledge Director Townsend and Mr. Carroll and other members of the TYC staff. Let me first just say something to the community, that how much I appreciate your support. And I can't tell you how much pride I felt in sitting and listening to the other members of the community who, frankly, have probably said what I'm about to say better than I could ever say it already. And I'm exceptionally proud to be associated with this community, and exceptionally proud to be associated with you all. And thank you again for being here and showing your support for the TYC. To the Director and to Mr. Carroll, my name is Stephen Haynes, and I am the Mayor of Brownwood. And today I've been asked to speak on behalf of several entities. I'm here not only on behalf of the City of Brownwood, but also on behalf of the Brown County Legislative Affairs Committee. And that committee represents the City of Brownwood, the City of Early, the Brown County, the Brownwood Economic Development Corporation, and the Brownwood Chamber of Commerce. So throughout my remarks today, I may refer to Brownwood, but I hope everyone will know that when I say Brownwood or our community, that I'm referring to our larger community and all of our friends in this county and the adjacent areas, including our friends in Early. On behalf of the community, I want to be very sincere with this, and we want to thank you for being here. Henry David Thoreau once wrote that the greatest compliment anyone could ever give me is to give me an opportunity to speak and to actually listen to what I say. And so we know you can make this decision sitting behind the desk in Austin and never come to visit these facilities or talk to these folks. That's your right. But you made the dedication time to come here and listen, not only to Brownwood, but to all the facilities. And I think that is to your great credit. Thank you for being here. Thank you for hearing our voice. There have been a lot of stories that have floated around about government cutbacks, and one of my favorites about a woman who was reading about government cutbacks in the paper. And as she looked over at her husband and she read, she said, honey, I'm reading here that the federal government is making large cutbacks, including the military. And in fact, some of them are going to affect our military substantially, and they're planning to eliminate 6 overage destroyers. The husband said, honey, that's too bad. I know you'll miss your mother. All joking aside, let me say that I don't envy your job. But in a sense, I can somewhat relate to it. Over the last few years, the City of Brownwood has had to cut our budget tremendously. And as the Chief Executive Officer, I, along with the other members of our council and Chief administrative staff, have been forced to make some very difficult decisions in order to balance the budget. And yet, while that's difficult, we recognize that government cutbacks are essential and necessary. Despite recent trends at the federal level, our government was in fact created as a limited government. And it's imperative that government always endeavor to live within its means. Here's what I want everyone to understand, not just Director Townsend, because I bet she understands this and appreciates it. But what I want everyone to understand is this. Believing in the concept of limited government and seeing it implemented are 2 totally different things. Everyone wants to pay fewer taxes. Everyone wants less government regulation. But no one wants it to affect their community. No one wants it to affect their friends. And no one wants it to affect their family. While everyone agrees that facility closures are reasonable, they're prudent, and they're necessary, every community that you go to is going to say, not me. We're different, and we're special. Every community that you go to is going to say that cutting the TYC facility will cripple their economy and devastate the community. Brownwood can make those arguments. Unlike many of the facilities located in more urban settings or near urban settings, the TYC employees in Brownwood don't have some of the options that those other TYC facilities may have. We don't have adjacent communities that have the same type of job offerings that they have in those other areas of the state. And as a result, it would be inevitable that TYC cuts in Brownwood would force friends out of our community. It would force families out of our community. And we would lose not only friends and families, we would lose community leaders and allies who have valiantly fought for Brownwood. However, that really isn't what I want to spend my time on today. Rather than focusing on how Brownwood will be negatively affected by a TYC closure, I really want going to spend some time talking to you about how the TYC would be negatively affected in losing Brownwood. You're going to hear from several speakers today. You've already heard from several very eloquent speakers who have said it so well. But when you're done hearing from our community, I hope you'll be convinced that the TYC needs Brownwood as much or more than Brownwood needs the TYC. I want to begin by saying something that a lot of people have already said. And I want to begin by offering probably our most positive attribute, and that, of course, is our location. In business, they say the three most important attributes of your business are location, location, and location. The same rule obviously applies to government. An effective government must be accessible to the people they serve. I'm going to pop up the map here. This map was given to me by some TYC folks. It may even be on the TYC website. Now I want the audience, as well as I'm sure the director is already familiar with it, but to take a quick look at their facilities. The ones in black represent the actual institutional facilities. What you're going to see is that Brownwood is the only remaining facility west of Interstate 35. The only remaining facility west of Interstate 35. Now, I want the director and Mr. Carroll to know I'm saying this in a very joking manner, so don't take it personally. But the reality is, if you were to close the Brownwood TYC, we really ought to just relabel this and call it the East Texas Youth Commission. Give you some examples. With the closure of the West Texas facility, if someone were to, if a judge were to want to send a child or a student to one of the facilities, Brownwood would close. Mark would be the closest facility. 700 miles from El Paso, or an 11-hour drive. Similarly, our good friends and longtime allies in Midland and Odessa would have to drive approximately 700, or pardon me, remember what happened in spring? 350 miles, or about 6 hours from Midland and Odessa. And here's the killer, they have to drive through Brownwood to get there. Really? So Brownwood's central location, while yet a simple point, is very, very important. Our location is simply superior to all the other locations, and frankly, invaluable in maintaining a statewide facility. In addition to the geographic location, I want to emphasize another attribute that I think is very promising or speaks a lot to our facilities. On the TYC comparison matrix, Ron Jackson 1 and 2 both scored exceptionally well in turnover ratio. And so that's one of the things that I want to talk about. Here are the turnover ratios of all the different facilities. And what you will see is that Ron Jackson 1 and Ron Jackson 2 are number 2 and 4 on the turnover ratio, meaning that we have less employees leave than the other facilities. And you'll see that our numbers are really close to the number 1 facility. While facilities like Corsicana have more than double our turnover ratio. Well, why is that important? Here's what I think that symbolizes. Recently, I was having dinner with another mayor. We were sitting down talking about city things, as I guess mayors are going to do. And I mentioned that my predecessor had served as mayor for 26 years. And the predecessor before him had served as mayor for over 2 decades as well. And then later in the conversation, I was talking about our EDC director retiring. And our EDC director had served almost 20 years in that one position as EDC director. And this mayor from the other community said, boy, you guys in Brownwood believe in consistency and longevity. And that's true. In Brownwood, we believe in consistency and longevity. And what I think that represents is that our workforce, in our community, and our people are simply more dedicated, more loyal, and less transient than state average. And I think it's a great credit to our people and our employees at the Ron Jackson facility that they have stayed and been less transient and been committed to the job. Finally, I want to emphasize that the TYC should remain in this community because of the great history of effective volunteerism, and you've heard a lot about that this morning. In 2010, the Brownwood Ron Jackson unit had 10,753 hours of time volunteered to improving the student population. Upon request, I was provided with a list of programs that's 4 pages long, single-spaced, and so obviously there's no way I have time to cover all of those programs, but I've listed them. all of the different facilities that we go on. I do, however, want to, and certainly, Director, if you're interested in that list, I certainly can provide it to you if you don't already have it, email it. But there are a couple of facilities that I do want to emphasize. As you know, Ron Jackson 1 is the only girls facility in the state. And, of course, that means if we were to close Ron Jackson 1, we'd have to completely retrain and shift gears, and it wouldn't be an efficient process. But another important point is because we have this all-girls facility, we have innovated some things in that all-girls facility that wouldn't be possible in other places. One of those is that we have a Girl Scout troop here. And I don't know if everyone in the community knows that. There are currently 14 members of that Girl Scout group, which is a very important program for those people at the state school. And they're being taught Scout values, they're being taught teamwork, they're being taught goal setting, they're being taught positive decision making and effective communication skills and choices for healthy living and healthy relationships. And then, of course, I want to be sure to emphasize for anyone who may not know that at our PAWS program, because as I understand it, that was a program that Brownwood created. And that, like we were the first to have the Girl Scouts program, we were the first to have and created the PAWS program. And the PAWS program, for those of you who don't know, is a collaboration between our animal shelter and the TYC, where our animal shelter is allowing these girls at Ron Jackson 1 to train these animals. And in doing so, those students are learning something. And they're learning that rules have a reason. And they're learning that in life, good behavior is both expected and rewarded. It's an incredible program that we hope to implement statewide due to the effective and thoughtful ingenuity of the good people of Brownwood, Texas. Now, in the next few minutes, you're going to hear from speakers all throughout our community. And again, what I hope you take away from these presentations is that Brownwood is a blessing to your students, and one that the TYC boards cannot afford to lose. While I have not lived in every community you will visit, I have lived in several communities throughout the state of Texas. And I can tell you, I do not believe you will find another community that has Brownwood's spirit of cooperation or its compassion for your students. I got a call last night from Mike Corley, our chief of police, who planned to come and speak. Unfortunately, he has a police training activity. He couldn't be here. But he passed on something to me that he wanted me to pass on to you, which I think says a lot about his character. In the entire calendar year of 2010, there was one police report made at the TYC facilities, both of them. That one police report resulted from a complaint about an incident that happened at another facility. So I want you to take that into consideration. We have this population of students out there that have been sent to this facility because of discipline or behavioral problems of some sort. And yet our staff has done such a tremendous job that not one time in the entire calendar year 2010 were the Brownwood Police called to respond to any type of incident, which tells me our staff was doing a tremendous job in maintaining that facility. That they had truly been the facility that all the other TYC facilities look to for good behavior and modeling the right relationships with those students. I didn't really plan to tell this story, but I'm going to tell it at the end because I heard so many other speakers give their personal accounts of TYC, so I'm going to give mine. Several years ago, I was involved and still am involved with Fellowship of Christian Athletes, and it's something that I did growing up and something that I'm proud of. And Fellowship of Christian Athletes does what they call Fields of Faith, which is a big event where one day a year everyone goes out and they have this big rally for all the youth. And so we realized we invited all the schools in our region, and someone at the FCA meeting said, no, we don't invite the TYC. Well, obviously the TYC kids can't come to Fields of Faith, so we said, you know what we should do? We should go to them. So we set up, the Fellowship of Christian Athletes set up a special day to go out to the TYC facility and do a Fellowship of Christian Athletes rally for the students. Brought in special speakers, the same speakers we brought for the other events. We sent out all of our volunteers. We got a live band and really pumped this thing up. After that that first Fellowship of Christian Athletes event, the chaplain, Mrs. Boss, called me or called one of the other people and said, y'all's event had enormous impact on this facility. And I've got several kids that want to be baptized, but I've got the word baptized. And so I began to call around. I knew that our church did some ministry at the Havens unit and that we had a portable Baptist program. So I began to try to get a hold of baptistry, but it was already dedicated to the heavy unit. Getting it in and out was difficult. So we began to talk about what can we do. So I came up with a brilliant idea that I went to Tractor Supply and bought a horse trough. A big metal steel horse trough. And I delivered in the back of my truck to the TYC facility. And I delivered that trough to Mrs. Voss. And you know what? I would have been thrilled to death that she baptized one person in that horse trough. I went and picked it up almost 2 years later. After 2 years of baptizing people, she had gotten enough state money to buy her own baptistry. Partially because the women didn't like being baptized in the horse trough. If I'm not mistaken, she had baptized 38 women in the horse trough. And my horses are enjoying it today. Not my baptistry, but drinking. Director and Mr. Carroll, thank you for being here with me today. Again, it means a lot. It says a lot about your institution that you took the time to come here and hear a voice. If there's anything in the world that City of Brownwood can give to you, if there's any information you need,